Okay. So, as you know, if you have any questions, you're welcome to pose them by just speaking a question or by posing your question in the chat box, writing your question in the chat box.
Magdi?
Yes, hello Zoe.
Hi. So last satsang, your interchange with Holly really hit me about what is the reality of the present. And in your lead up, in your questions to her, there was something I just wanted to clarify. You talked about, so starting the inquiry and going, and you said something like, generically, in my experience, there's no end to these negative emotions and thoughts. So then I look and see who is suffering. But you're speaking, and when you started that, you were speaking. That's prior to Sahaja Samadhi, correct? That there's no end. Right? And then I just
So the question
then once,
is there a light at the end of the tunnel or not, right?
Right, exactly. So once the me impression is gone, then there's that whole thing of experiencing no end to the negative emotions and thoughts that just dissolves because there's no me impression.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, the entire impression of separation or personhood and being a person, all of that goes on dissolving throughout the contemplation. Sometimes it's noticed as it's happening, and sometimes it's noticed after the fact, like matters that used to disturb you, that used to trigger you in the past. You may find that they have really no echo. There is no reaction to them. You will find yourself more and more happy without even sort of noticing that you're happy. It's just it becomes more and more your natural state of being without mind, meaning being in as the transparency, as the presence, as the peace, as the unopposed beingness. So the impressions of the contractions and the difficulties we have in life, it's always related to an opposition. Something is opposing something else. There is a certain thought that arises that is saying, oh, this should not be this way. That should not be that way. And these thoughts that arise that are basically separating you from what is happening, they have at their core the belief that that you are a person, and that there is a personal self that needs to be protected. So as the me impression dissolves, you will not. There won't be any more. There won't be an entity anymore that is suffering. So when I was talking about there is an unending the separate self is unending in its thinking and feeling. I'm not sure exactly how I said it. I was referring to ignorance, to the sense of identification. So
Okay.
the identity is in this very moment. In this very moment, we identify as a person. In this very moment, it's not like there is an actual history. There is no history because there is no past. There is just this moment that I am considering myself to be a person, and that is not seen. It is subtle. It is sort of, below the radar. So you have to sort of become discerning, to discern that the self definitions that are behind the scene.
Yes, that whole interchange you had with Holly, when I listened to it for the second time, it was like I really heard it then. What is the reality? And it hit me, the awareness is always the reality of whatever.
Yes, because in terms of the mind or images and thoughts, they're constant. They're images and thoughts. It's a flow. It's like the weather. It's constantly changing, and to be contemplating what is the reality of my experience focuses the question, brings the question to be more than just one more thought. It's sort of it's pointing to the heart of the question, because the heart of the contemplation is to awaken to the reality of the self.
Yeah.
And the reality of the self cannot be something that is constantly changing. It cannot be the body, it cannot be the mind, it cannot be the world. It's constantly changing. It cannot be what appears. Simply by the very nature of what appears, that is a changing nature. It has a constantly changing nature. It's appearing within that does not change, within the eternity of consciousness, the infinity of consciousness, the infinite invisible reality of consciousness. So you bring the question away from thinking about consciousness to looking directly right now in your experience to the reality of your experience. And in this very moment, when you contemplate the reality of your experience, you cannot come to any object. You don't come to any object. You sort of come to a complete standstill of the mind. Sort of the stillness of the mind. And simultaneously, the light of awareness. Because in this very moment, we could say that awareness is alive, is real. And this awareness that is real, the reality of awareness, is what I am. I am the awareness. So rather than moving forward, it's as if like you're moving to, as if you're behind your eyes, behind your face, sort of looking from slightly behind your face, perceiving from that vantage point. And it's just a metaphor, it's just a little yoga to shift your point of perception from the face or the eyes to slightly behind and and not from a point, from a field of perception. So it's a field of perception that is perceiving. It's not a point of perception that is perceiving. It's a field of perception.
Yeah. You know, the yoga meditations really help with that, expanding
Yes.
just this whole contracted sensation
Yes.
that's been my experience for a long time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a perceptual field that has no phenomenal substance. It's as if it's a vast knowing emptiness. And I am that.
Mm.
So you go to the emptiness that perceives. And the perceived is intimate with that emptiness. So it's the emptiness that's perceiving itself within itself. You know, like sometimes you go to the, what are they called? Planetarium. You go to the planetarium, and it's a large sphere. Have you ever been to the planetarium?
Yes, a
Yeah.
long time ago, but yes, I know
Yes.
what you're talking about.
So it's a large sphere, and you're lying in it, and you're watching the universe. Now imagine that you are this sphere, and the universe that you're observing is within the sphere. Yeah. So it's a sphere that is perceiving the perceptions within itself, but that sphere doesn't have a radius. It's an infinite radius, and it has no center. So what you perceive is not apart from the perceiving. You are perceiving the perceiving. You're perceiving your perception, but you and the perceiving are not different.
Yeah.
You are the perceiving, and the perceptions are intimate with the perceiving. So I, the perceiving, and the perceived are one. And the reality of that entire mechanism is the infinite, invisible, aware presence, the empty, aware beingness. And the impression of being a man or a woman is like those images that are appearing on the surface of the planetarium. Are certain galactic events that are appearing on the surface of the planetarium. So the body mind, impression of being a person is in this moment arises as a thought and a sensation. It arises as a very subtle I thought, me thought, with the sensation that then the mind says, you know, I am sitting on this chair. I am sitting in this room. Which is like a thought and a sensation that is, it's a mechanism of thinking and feeling. But the thinking and the feeling that tries to define you doesn't define you. Like the weather doesn't define the space. It's only defining itself. So the thoughts and the sensations that speak about who you are and how you're doing and so on, they are completely off. They're empty, because when you go to them, you don't find them.
Yeah, that question, what is the reality of the thought or the sensation? It's I am
Right.
the reality.
Right. Right. When you go to the sensation, you go, you only find I, you only find awareness. Because in fact, there is nowhere to go. I mean, figuratively speaking, we say, go to the sensation. But where do you go to the sensation of your belly or the sensation of your leg? Where do you go?
Right.
Or to the sensation of warmth or the sensation of tiredness? Where do you go? There isn't like anywhere to go.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing.
You're just there as awareness. But the thought that there is a me and somewhere to go, when it's not examined, then there is the impression of, yeah, God, I have so much more work to do to get there, you know?
Yeah, gosh, talk about being on a hamster wheel with
Yes.
that thought.
Right. Yes, the hamster wheel.
Oh my goodness.
And it's not restful. It's very exhausting, and it's not happy. It's not peaceful.
And the peace is always accessible.
Yes, because the peace is absolute. Like space. What could oppose space? Nothing. You can put a couch in the space or remove the couch. It's absolute. Space is absolute. It doesn't have an opposite. Like beingness is absolute. There is no opposite. There is no thing as non-being. Because what would be non-being? What would know it? For it to be real, it has to be known. Something has to know it, give it reality. What would know non-being? It's impossible. Similarly, peace is absolute. Peace is a quality of consciousness. Peace, love, freedom, transparency, wisdom, all of that is qualities that we know that we know happiness. Nobody needs to explain it to us. We know freedom. Nobody needs to explain to us. We know love. Nobody needs to explain it to us. They're absolute qualities. They're qualities of the self, qualities of consciousness. So yes, the peace is closer than close. It is what I am. So I don't seek peace. I only recognize it, or not,
Yeah.
or not.
Or not.
Or,
Yeah. But yeah, when oh, it's just what a gift.
so when we make a concept out of peace, it's not true peace.
Right.
The concept of peace is a concept, is some concept about peace. And then we have all sorts of arguments about, oh, well, my concept, your concept, no, it's like this, no, it's like that. But that's all mind.
Yeah, and it keeps you out of peace. You know, I was walking on this trail and there's this billboard. It said, if you want, or maybe it was a car bumper sticker. It said, if you want peace, you have to work for justice.
Oh, yes. Work for justice.
Oh, and that sounds reasonable in the world, but it's like, well, that just takes you completely out of peace
Yes.
working for
Well,
something.
but
Yeah.
if you look at justice, you know, look at justice. Can justice be a result of thought?
Huh.
Because thought is random.
Mm.
I mean, that's my experience of thought. I don't know. It's random.
Yes. Yes.
One day I love you, next day you're bothering me.
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think I shared sometime, I was in one of the satsangs, how I was in a group meeting many, many years ago. And I was in this group, there were maybe, I don't know, 20 people. And this one person that I had never met before, when we sat in the group, we sat in silence, I felt that this person was really, really annoying me. She hadn't said or done anything. It was really annoying me. When she started saying something, I was just so annoyed, so annoyed. You see how random thought is?
Yes. You know, I was sitting with something like that came up for me. It was like, wow, you know, my beloved daughter didn't respond to me in the way, you know, that I wanted. And then all these emotions came up, and it was so clear it has nothing to do with her. It's my own misery coming up, like you've talked about before.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Oh, thank you.
so
Yeah.
thought cannot know justice or injustice.
Yeah.
Thought is random.
Mm.
And yet we seek justice. We have thoughts about what justice is. Right? So we think, oh, no, justice to do this, and justice, no, to do that. And every person has their thoughts about justice.
Ah, that's wild.
But so I am all for justice if it's universal justice.
Oh.
Universal justice is just justice that nobody can say no to.
Yeah.
Because it's universal.
Yeah.
So can anybody say no to happiness?
No.
Or peace or love? So you have to be watchful of what arises from the mind that sounds very beautiful and very nice. And
Right.
and what arises from your absolute certainty, the absolute certainty that comes from insight, which comes from the contemplation of truth. Because outside of the contemplation of truth is thought, right?
Yes.
Thought, the world, the body, the mind, and there is contemplation. And you cannot have both. Meaning, you cannot be happy and peaceful and be all messed up in your thoughts and in your feelings and the world. You cannot, because the mind, meaning thought and feelings and the world, they're a mess, right? I mean,
yeah, complete.
they're
Complete.
sometimes it's okay, but not for too long. Then we have peace, and then we have peace here. We're very happy. America is a beautiful country. We have freedom and so on. But yet what we're doing throughout the world is pretty atrocious. Well, it depends what we're looking at. But, so it may look that the world, body, mind, oh, it's very happy, but it's a mess.
Yeah, nothing in the world. I think I was just looking at, okay, well, desires, and we've talked about that before, but all the desires really are ultimately for peace and happiness. And nothing in the world can give that. So yes. Only the contemplation brings that, brings it back home.
If you are desiring peace and happiness, you need to come to understand that when you are desiring something, you are standing apart from it. Mm-hmm. So you have to come to that understanding. I am desiring something, I'm standing apart of it. I'm standing apart from the peace and happiness. So, and if I'm desiring it, then I'm wanting it later. If I want to get $1 million and I go to the casino, I'm hoping that I will win tomorrow. So desire has always to do with a postponement. Right?
Yes, and that whole begging bowl concept.
Right. Yeah. Begging bowl, give me, because which means now I don't have.
Yeah.
So when I desire peace and happiness, means there isn't peace and happiness now, I will have it tomorrow. Oh. If you want peace and happiness tomorrow, that means you don't want it now.
That's right. And you'll never get it now.
There is no tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
So we look at what is peace and happiness now? And we will not find it in thinking. We'll find it in relaxing, in being, in those tendencies that to condensate, to concentrate in the opposite direction of decompress, decompose, decompose. Yes?
Yeah. Thank you, Magdi.
Okay, sorry.
Magdi.
Yes, hello, Maru.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, very well. Good to see you, Maru.
When I look inside, I find that mess that you were mentioning. So what do I do?
Yeah.
Mess. Because sometimes like attention goes more to the self, but usually it's easier if you put attention on something more objective. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. When you put your attention on something objective, meaning something that's arising, and objective things arise as thoughts.
Or sensations.
Thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. And they're unending.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you put your attention on them, then the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and becomes more and more complex. But the question is, does it bring peace and happiness? It's true that it may be a good diversion or a good distraction, or it occupies your mind for a while. But does it bring the peace and the happiness? It's a good question to ask ourselves, because we want the peace and the happiness in everything we do. We want the peace and the happiness, not just for ourselves, but just the peace and the happiness, period, for ourselves and around us. So the question is, does it bring the peace and the happiness? We may realize that no, it doesn't. But it distracts us away for a little while. Now the question is, why do we put our attention on thoughts, sensations, feelings, perceptions? We ask ourselves this question, why? Well, sometimes it's necessary. We are hungry, so we put our attention on cooking a meal. It makes sense. Or we need to make an income, so we put our attention on doing some work. But we're talking about something else. We're talking more than the functional. We're talking about the psychological. And when we are doing the psychological, when putting our attention on thoughts, feelings, perceptions, emotions, ideas, thinking, maybe we're just avoiding being, just somehow being. There is a thought about it, a judgment about being, maybe, that says, oh, no, we cannot just be, because it doesn't feel good. We need something that feels good. But then we realize that when we're pursuing something that feels good, it feels good and bad, and good and bad, and good and bad. And it's exhausting you have to always be looking, what is the next good thing to think about or to. And maybe sometimes we try to just be still, be quiet, and experience whatever is arising. We may come upon a certain stillness that has no cause, that's there, that is untouched, unaffected by what's arising. It's as if, like, in the middle of the storm, there is a quiet center. That there is this quiet center that you cannot find it by keep moving and moving and moving. You have to sort of give a chance to being still, being open, being available, being willing to be this not knowing space, to recognize this not knowing space that has no thinking in it, and saying in a way that, okay, it's okay. Let me give this a chance. Because we have given a lot of chances already to putting our attention on so many things, but it hasn't brought the peace and the happiness.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't mean that those sensations aren't going to be there, but that your attention is in the being.
Yes.
The sensations are there, but
Yes.
they are like softer if you don't put the attention on them.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, the sensations are there, but there is something magical that happens when we invite stillness, invite beingness, when we just be, The idea that I am a separate self, when I just be, when I just am, that idea becomes less concrete, becomes less solid. And the feeling of being a me also becomes less solid, because being is not solid. It's vast. Being is vast, is open. And so the things that were arising, that you were mentioning, Maru, those things, when I am a me, they are pushing against your meanness, your me. But when you are as being, you're this open space of being, this aware, resting, restful being, they also, because there isn't like so much of a barrier, an edge, they dissolve into being, they rest as being. So it's best to not think about it. I mean, of course, your question is, well, the feelings, the sensations will still be there. We don't know. Just let it be. It's let it be alive. Don't make an image of it, idea of it. We don't know. Let's see. Sometimes there will be, sometimes there won't be. I don't know. Sometimes they'll arise, they'll dissolve, whatever. It's just we're talking about our true nature is being. Before the human, it's being, or awareness, or consciousness, aware presence. Yes, Satchitananda, the presence, being, awareness. That's our true nature, and then there is the human form. So our true nature is being. So we're talking about our true nature, and then the human arises as thoughts, sensations, perceptions. The human arises as thoughts, perceptions, and sensations, but it arises in the vastness of being, because being is always there. So the human, the thoughts, the sensations, the perceptions, they're no issue, like the weather arises in the space, but the weather is not an issue for the space. Now, the weather, like a tornado, for example, may be quite an issue for the trees, because sometimes the tornado is strong and the trees will break. Right? So what appears has impact on other appearances. Yes? So the body is an appearance. The human form is an appearance, as perception, sense, that human dynamic. And it has an impact on the animals, on the planet, on each other. But it has no impact on beingness. So, like, for example, when you when you hit your toe in the corner of the table, that corner table has an impact on your toe, and you will feel the pain in your toe. So within the realm of the world, body, mind, there are impacts, there are effects, but there are no effects onto consciousness, onto beingness. But when we overlook consciousness, and now we impersonalize, we personalize. When we personalize consciousness, meaning when we say consciousness is body mind, now I am a body. And when I stub my toe against the corner of the table, it is as if consciousness is feeling the pain. Because I have impersonalized consciousness. I have personalized consciousness. And when you personalize consciousness, you're experiencing that everything is happening to you, you as this person. You experience yourself as a person. So the contemplation, Maru, is to turn your attention on to your true nature, which is the reality that perceives. The reality that perceives cannot be a form. An object cannot perceive. Only consciousness can perceive. An object cannot perceive. Only consciousness perceives. So it perceives this perception via the body-mind. And it perceives itself via itself. It knows itself via itself. So that is the contemplation of what am I truly. To always come back to what am I truly. And the self is pure silence and stillness and peace, happiness, love and beauty. And keep returning to that. Keep returning to that. Allow the world, body, mind to do its thing. When a storm comes, some trees will break, some trees will not break. I don't know. Sometimes a volcano erupts. Maybe the lava goes to the ocean, or maybe it goes towards the village. We don't know. It may have an impact on the village, burn a lot of houses in the village, or it may go to the ocean and bypass the village. We don't know. That realm is always like that. You need to recognize that is not like that. That is not in the phenomenal realm.
Yes, thank you. Beautiful answer. Thank you very much.
Okay, Maru. Okay. Any questions?
Magdi?
Yes, hello Esther.
Hi there. It keeps coming to me to ask you to speak about courage and inner strength. But then I'm realizing that those are qualities of the personal I, aren't they? It's when I speak of courage and inner strength, it somehow relates to the personal I.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know, sometimes we are, I don't know if you've done that, but when I was younger, we go to a water hole out in the woods, a beautiful water hole, and there is a rock, and people are jumping like 20 or 30 feet into the water. And it's very scary. At least it looks so. And so somebody maybe appropriate to speak about, to have the courage to jump into the water, to take that big jump. And it's really very encouraging when you see others that they're jumping and they're fine and they're happy and they're telling you, hey, come on, jump. I like that because in a way there is something of the sort in our contemplation, because we're holding back, we're protecting the personal self. In our contemplation, at some point we have to take a step of courage. It may seem to be very scary to die. Maybe feel very lonely. And we get those feeling of loneliness, and we feel so. With your teacher, he or she tells you, jump. And the happiness and the peace that you experience with your teacher gives you courage, like when you are watching the other people jumping in the water and they're happy, gives you courage to jump. And you'll still maybe have a hesitation until the last minute, but at some point you jump. And when you jump, you will find the hands of God holding you. So there is trust in the guidance, and trust in the teaching, trust in the teacher, and also the trust that comes from the happiness that you experience in your contemplation and via the insights that you get in your contemplation, the freedom that you experience from the old beliefs, the relaxation, the openness, the transparency that you experience. You need to trust those gives you courage, gives you strength, this inner strength that you mentioned in your question. Inner strength that doesn't come from the personal self, from the me the strong or me the weak, but it comes from your experience of the happiness that, of course, the personal self says, oh, no. It's too dangerous to go that direction. But you need to trust not the personal self who's always trying to maintain itself, but trust your insight, trust the happiness and the peace, trust the teaching, trust the teacher. And you cannot force this trust from thought. It's a trust that blooms within you with the recognition of, yes, that's the way, yes, that resonates. And it's this inner resonance within you that you trust, and that gives you the inner strength. The journey is a journey to peace and happiness, love, beauty, truth, wisdom, away from the isolation and the separation of the me, away from the angst, personal anxieties and worries and personal images. And the journey, it's a beautiful journey. It's only one I, only one reality, only one self. I am thou. One truth. It's so beautiful.
Thanks, Magdi. I'm grateful every day for being drawn to the path. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay. Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much for your lovely company, and
Thank you.
yeah, okay, goodbye.
Namaste.
Okay, namaste. Very lovely to see you all.